glad to have you on. I
Yeah,
definitely
man.
think this is going to be, really good podcast. I've talked to, some firefighters before, some first responders before, talked about kind of all that job entails. Well, far from all of it, but some stuff that job does entail, the training side, the mental side, and to me, it's just so important and interesting to talk about all those things because for multiple reasons, but I think one right now just because of how much kind of um, negativity that surrounds it. So just putting out some positivity around those topics.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. If you're not focusing on positive, at least a majority of the time. I mean, you can't avoid the negative stuff, but you got to do the positive more because otherwise you just let the negative dominate everything, and then you're pretty much not being fit at that point because you need positivity to really um mental fitness, mental positivity. It all translates from the brain to the body. Wherever the head goes, the body goes. So if you're thinking negative all the time, then you're not going to do much with your body.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's crazy how much the mind does have an impact on even just an individual decision. And just I was when you said that, it made me think about this morning. I was getting up and my alarm went off, and I'm that kind of person that has to have like 3 alarms because I'm just so used to alarms now. It's almost like whenever you start taking some type of drug, you have to take more and more of them. I'm the
Right.
person that has used too many alarms. So I just like my body and my hand knows where to go to shut it off before my mind even realizes it's going off.
Yeah.
Um, but my alarm was going off and I was like, man, I really don't want to get up. But then in my head, my thought the morning before was like, you know, I want to do I want to do things not because of how I feel. And when you said your mind kind of controls your situation in your physical world, it's just so true how it has such an impact on one decision leading to the next.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we dive too deep into any of these topics, let's have you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, a little bit of your background, and then we'll get more into it.
All right. Well, my name is Fred Mohr. I started on the fire department back in 2004. A couple of years ago, I was promoted to captain. I worked predominantly in a truck company or a ladder company for almost my whole career. I was actually a driver there. And then when I got promoted, I went into an engine company. And it was my first time working in an engine company, which was a very uplifting experience for me because I felt like I was fresh and new again. I kind of had to you know change the way I did things and thought and everything. And that's a very important point when it comes to challenges in life and fitness in general. Don't be afraid to try new things, even if it scares you, because you'll be alive again and you'll be able to really get into it. So that's what I've been doing with my career, and the whole way through since I was like 19 years old, I've been very heavily into fitness, starting off with mountain biking and then getting into weightlifting and then getting into road cycling and still mountain biking all along. And the time went by, decades went by. Um, and I got more into like bodybuilding style training, and then I got into Olympic style training, and I do a little bit of everything. And then I became a personal trainer, and I've started training with a steel mace, and I've started a podcast called Steel Mace Nation, and pretty much, family man. I have a wife and kid, and I still make fitness a priority, eating well a priority, and I believe in developing leadership, not only in your household but also in your community. And it's a big thing that I believe in. That I mean, that's why I became a captain. I wanted to take a leadership position, and yeah, that's about it. And just life is full of fitness and a lot of grilled chicken.
I think it's cool what you kind of said about keeping things fresh a little bit and fitness can really help you do that. I think it's a little bit of a misconception when it comes to fitness. It's almost like oh, you have to be such a rigid person on a routine. But to me, it's almost like the opposite. You have a little bit of when you have control over your body and you're going through and hitting your workouts well and having fun with it too is a good important thing. It just, to me at least, it makes me feel a little bit more free. My capacity to do more things is open. And I'm more rigid, of course, for that 30 minutes to 90 minutes that I'm working out. But past that, I feel like my life has more opportunity whenever I'm in better shape and I'm there more mentally. And just, I think a lot of people don't take into consideration how it makes you feel after you're done working out.
Yeah, that I definitely agree with you there. And I tell people this all the time that, you got to, if you want to try to get into this, you got to devote yourself at least a little bit, make it a consistent thing. Try to make fitness a centerpiece in your life. I had, the fire department's rough, and the guys, they love, they'll bust your chops and they don't care. You will be humbled. Um, and I had one guy, because I'm always talking about fitness and I'm always encouraging people. And he says to me, Fred, there's more important things in life than just working out. And I never thought about it before when he said it. And then I stopped and I looked at him. I went, no, no, you're wrong. You got it backwards. The most important thing is working out. And he's like, why? I go, well, because then you're healthy.
Yeah.
And you don't go anywhere if you're not healthy, right?
Right. That's
So
right. Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, in a way, he didn't think about it like that. He didn't think like, because I think most people would agree health is the most important thing. And that's the goal. That's the end goal, at least, or the goal along the way, I guess, whichever way you want to look at it. But um the physical nature of having to just be healthy. I think so
mhm.
many people want health, but then they either don't want to put the time or effort into it. I think there's multiple reasons for that, but they think of the end goal. I think it's more of like the short-term gratification thing. They think
Yes,
of the end goal of, okay, I would love to be healthy, but insert, excuse here. I don't have the time. I'm too
right.
old. Don't have the money. There's millions of reasons why you shouldn't, can't, or won't work out or eat healthy. But yeah, I think everybody does want that end goal, and I think that's where you see a lot of times, the short term things that you see on Instagram or in magazines or whatever it is, with a 4 week workout program to get you fit, or a supplement that's gonna do all the work for you. So yeah, it's just so many people want that result that other people will work for, and
Yeah.
that's really the only way to get it.
Yeah, and I always try to reframe it for people. If I get a new personal training client and I see that they're dragging and they're reluctant and they're practically just like paying me just to force them to do something, I always say it's not about that end goal, because you don't have a crystal ball and you don't have that kind of control over your life. If you could think, oh, in 1 year, I'm going to have six-pack abs and I'm going to be ripped. Okay, well, that's a nice goal to set up for yourself, but that might not be where you're going to be a year from now, because life happens. So I try to reframe it to, it's a journey, and you're going to go somewhere better. You're going to change your body. You're going to change how you feel, but it's not going to be exactly what you think it is, but it's still going to be awesome. But don't worry about that. Instead, focus on the process getting there. It's always about the process.
Absolutely. I think a lot of times we don't, or at least people that are first getting into it don't even consider how good it can be. They think, okay, I want to lose X amount of pounds or I want to look like this, when they don't think about those opportunities that they'll have in the everyday feeling better. Like, to me, that's more satisfying than it is to, gain X pounds of muscle or lose X pounds of
Yeah,
fat, because you know, that's just an end destination. And once you reach that, if you're not still in love with the process, like, you're just either gonna become stagnant, or that's probably the best thing that can happen. The worst thing is you're gonna end up being, even in a worse position, because you're lacking motivation to continue, and you end
right.
up worse than when you started.
Yeah, because if you think in 1 year you're going to have those abs, and then when you get there and you don't, well, your brain is just gonna say, well, we just wasted the past year. You didn't, but you set yourself up for that. Not realizing, well, you don't have six pack, but you have a four pack. They're almost a six pack. I mean, but you're stronger. Your back doesn't hurt anymore. Your wife says, "Wow, you look good." I mean, something like that. But you're not even appreciating those things because you're so stuck on this goal that maybe you shouldn't have been going for.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a thought I've recently had. I was actually watching a video, kind of a montage, because sometimes you just gotta watch a motivational montage. And I was watching actually a Jocko Willink one, and
Yeah,
who better? But it
yeah,
got me thinking. He was talking about I can't remember the exact thing. I think he was talking about like how your everything is a reason, like every rationalization is a lie. And it got me really like thinking, like, people know, like, when they come to you, they come to me, they come to someone that has the information, and that's a good thing to do, certainly. But what people really need is not the how to. When somebody says, how do I lose weight, or how do I eat better, like, I think any pretty much any adult knows, if you exercise in pretty much any capacity and you eat, the fruits and vegetables and good meats, like, you're going to lose weight and you're going to be healthy and you're going to look better, all these things that people want. I think what I thought about was, the next time somebody asks me, how do I do this? How do I insert goal here? My first question from now on is going to be, not even address that how. It's going to be, well, why? Because I think that's the
yes,
most important question. Because if you don't really have a why, if the why is a shallow why, such as, because I feel a social pressure, which, that can be a starting point, but I think you have to build on it. You have to find a deeper meaning. But to me, that kind of just, when I was watching that montage, that motivational thing, it just, like, that thought really clicked with me. Like, it's not how is really, in this day and age, how is just such almost like a, it's it's important if you want to be like a competitor, if you want to do something crazy like that, where you need professional information. But just the basics, people know that. What they really need is that push and that reason.
yeah, absolutely. And I also, like I mentioned, trying out different things, and like, if you challenge somebody, a client, to try something different, a lot of times it's developing a skill or something, like, say, kettlebell swings or something, right? So you explain to them how you're supposed to do a kettlebell swing, and now they have to develop that skill. And and the how and the why and all this, that plays into it. And well, why are you developing the skill? Well, so I could learn something. Just the act of actually learning something. Or like the steel mace. Like, I have a steel mace right here, and if nobody's ever seen it before, it's got weight on one end, and it's a handle, and these all come in different sizes. And you have to develop a skill to use it properly. And well, why develop a skill? Well, to know more, to get better. It's fun, and there's a challenge there, and sometimes it's the challenge that we need.
Yeah, definitely. There's just so much goes into into just a single question, just at the basic level of health. But to kind of get into your own story, your your firefighting journey, if you want to call it that. It's kind of a maybe a weird way to put it, but
Nah, that's
when
perfect.
when did that start? Like, you said you got in 2004, I believe, but like, when did you really develop that interest? Or like, was it a specific person that said, hey, you should try this? Or was it a family thing? Like, how did you get into it?
All right. Well, a lot of times when you're a little kid, everybody wants to be a fireman or archaeologist or something like that. And I did want to be a fireman. But then as I got older, I didn't really know anybody that was a fireman. So it just sort of, when you're a kid, dreams come and go. Um, and then as I started going up through my teen years, I was watching all my friends go off to college and do all these things. And I went into college, and it was a real struggle for me, just because I'm not that kind of guy that could sit in a classroom. And I started to really have like serious considerations. I had enough. I was young and stupid, but I had enough foresight to see maybe I was on a good track here. I said, well, if I can't really, if I'm struggling through school already, and then I'm going to go into more school, and if I really want a good job, there's always going to be school, and what am I going to do? And then I'm like, I don't want to sit behind a desk. I don't want to just do a mundane thing. And in my mind, I just thought about firefighting again. And to me, at the time, you know, you romanticize things. So to me, a fireman, I was going to be swinging on ropes, diving out windows. I was going to be living a life of like Spider-Man, a superhero or something. That's not mundane. That's going to be like, whoa, this crazy thing. Of course, when you get on the job, reality starts to kick in a little bit. But yeah, so in my 20s, I started trying to figure it out. And that was a very tough time period, because now by this time, a lot of the people that went to college and everything were coming out of college, and they were getting jobs and doing well. And you know, a couple people here and there I know are, you know, earning $100,000 a year coming out of college. And I'm like, oh, did I screw up again? So then I realized, well, it, I was applying for jobs all around. I still didn't really know anybody. I didn't know how to do it, what to do. And I just kept failing and failing over and over. And then I got bolder and bolder and bolder, because I had no other option. I was getting so deep into it, and time was passing me by. And I was like, no, I really want to do this, and I'm going to figure it out. And I was looking at all options at this point, moving out of state, whatever. And I grew up in a small suburban community, and that fire department was not going to work for me. I wouldn't be able to get hired there for all kinds of reasons. And so I shot for a large community. It's called Elizabeth, New Jersey. It's right outside of Newark Airport. It's an inner city. And I actually needed to move out of my parents' house anyway, because I had a girlfriend, and, you know, I wanted to, you know, be alone and be a man, you know? So I was like, all right. And I actually found an apartment in Elizabeth. And as soon as I moved in, the application came out like a couple months later. I filled it out. I did everything I had to do, started training, you know, like Rocky, running up and down the steps, doing whatever I got to do. And that list that I wound up on turned out to be a 5-year list, almost 5 years. In other words, I took the 99 2000 test, and due to various things that were going on in the city, the test, that list was delayed. So we just sat on the list, and it wasn't until 2004, beginning of 2004, that they actually called my name off the list. And I had all kinds of opportunities to move to Colorado and do all these other things. And just, you know, I just kept my focus like a laser beam. I'd never focused so hard on anything in my life, but it paid off, because then they ended up calling me, and I was like 30 years old when I actually got hired, going all the way back to like 22, 23 years old when I really started seriously trying.
So I think a lot of people don't really get that, because for a different job, you know, it's like, oh, you put your application in, and like in a week or whatever, a month, like they'll call you back or they won't call you back, and you'll get an interview, or you won't get an interview, and you'll know. And
Yeah.
so how do you mentally like stay in that much focus on that single job? Why not, like, why didn't you say, okay, I'm gonna go try on somewhere else?
Okay. Well, one thing was I really wanted it. The other thing was I had to live in the town where I was applying. So any opportunities that came up for me outside that box, I did take. So I was doing sales, and I was doing great in sales. I was actually working for a steel manufacturing company, and I had a company car, and I would drive around and go to job sites, and really like just I enjoyed the challenge of walking into a room and talking, and half the time I didn't even know what I was doing. You know, it was just like it was just I would get butterflies in my stomach, and it was always like a that was always like a thing for me. I get a little butterflies. I'm like addicted to. I guess it's like a little bit of an adrenaline junkie kind of thing. But yeah, the opportunities that I took were, it was calculated. I knew, like, if I moved to Colorado to start my life all over again, and they called me back in New Jersey, they're going to say they're going to investigate you, and then they're going to see you weren't living there. Where's all your return rent checks, Fred? Oh no, I moved to Colorado for 7 months. Okay, well then you're out. It was just like that. You had to be, couldn't get a call, you couldn't get a ticket, you couldn't get in trouble. The police are going to investigate you. You're going to take a psychological exam. They're going to try to catch you lying. So you had to be legit. And so I focused on that, but I did work at opportunities around me. I was working 2 or 3 jobs at any given moment, doing all kinds of stuff.
And during all this time, you still continue to train and do all that stuff as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I, my physical training, because it's New Jersey, and I don't know if you know, but in New Jersey, it's a lot of meatheads. They're like, "Yo, bro, we got to pump up the biceps and all that stuff." So I was with all those guys, and there was no form of unconventional training like I do now. How I train with kettlebells and Mace and stuff. It was traditional training, Arnold Schwarzenegger style stuff. Which was great because you're building up muscle, and I love bodybuilding training for hypertrophy purposes. I think it's great. It's got some downside to it, which we could talk about later, but my training was that, and then doing a lot of cardio and mountain biking and playing hockey. And, that was how I stayed lean and mean.
So once you got, I guess, was it a call? Once you got the call was it like an interview after that? Like, what was the next stage once you did get that call?
Well, the saga gets deeper. So it was starting to look like I wasn't even going to get the call. I knew that they were pulling people off the list, and it was the winter, and I remember I was calling a few contacts or some people I knew that were in town, and it wasn't good news. It seemed like they already had a list, and things weren't good. And at the time, my father was in the hospital with terminal cancer, and so I was running back and forth with that. So I did have this one particular job out of the 2 or 3 that I was always carrying, and I was a bartender, in a golf club in the town over, nice golf club, and in walks the mayor, and he's sitting right there, and they're having lunch, and I looked at my reflection in the back bar. I looked at myself in the eyes. I said, "This is it, man. You might get fired, but who cares?" I said to the waitress, "I'll deliver his drink myself." I brought the drink around. I put it right on the table. I said, "Mayor, if I can interrupt you for 1 second, please." I introduced myself. Now, the members who invited him in, the members that are my boss, are sitting there. They're all right, they're not really thinking I'm being too much of a dick. And then I let them know flat out. I said, "I want that job. I know you're putting guys on the list. I live in the town. I've been living there for years now." I said, I'm physically fit. I'm healthy. I take this stuff seriously. It's all I ever want to do my whole life." And then he said, "Well, write your name down, what number you are on the list." And then I found out that he went around and asked people, the members and everything. They all said I was a good guy. Thank God. And I wound up on the list that way. I got the call when I was at my father's bedside in the hospital. He was starting to fade out, and he was about to die. And he was my biggest fan, my father. He was rooting for me. He said, "You're going to get it." For 5 years, "You're going to get it. You're going to get it." And I hung up the phone, and I looked at him. I said, "I got it." And he started getting tears in his eyes, and so did I. And then, yeah, and then I had a report for our first day, like in a week. I didn't even have that much time to prepare. So there was no actual interview. How do you like that? I
Wow.
just went in. I saw the chief of the department hand me some paperwork. He looked at me. I was all disheveled and everything. And he goes, "Yeah, do all that stuff and get to it." And I was like, "Okay." And next thing I know, I'm standing in line up getting yelled at by a drill instructor.
That's crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just like, that's one of the cool things about doing a podcast is you get to talk to somebody and they have that story. Like, just the amount of stories that I've been able to hear and kind of like feel like you're a part of in a way. And it's just such a, a crazy turn of events. And I think one of the, like, kind of like you said, thank God nobody said anything bad about me. One of the, I guess, lessons there for life is like, don't burn any bridges, don't, like, unnecessarily make anybody your enemy. It's just, you
Yes.
never know when you're going to need their recommendation or something like that.
Yeah, and to that effect, be you, be an honest, genuine version of yourself. You don't have to be a fake person. Let them see who you are, but be respectful, be courteous, treat people with the way you want to be treated.
Definitely. Yeah, that's solid all around, just for any circumstance. But when you first get hired, what is the next stage of that look like for a firefighter?
So we go into training for 6 months, which is like every day for 5 days. You're off on the weekend, and you're with your group. You're basically, just picture, it's not military style. It's a little bit more lax than that. I mean, you'll have guys as old as like 35 in your class. They got families already and stuff. So it's not like, you know, what was that movie? Like Full Metal
Full Metal
Jacket,
Jacket,
where
yeah.
yeah, it's not that bad. But timing is everything. And the guy who was our battalion chief, our instructor, he was probably one of the most hardcore fire chiefs to come through the department. He's now retired, and he's actually a great guy. And he was turned out to be one of the best instructors, teachers I ever had, because he was kind of scary. And if you went to sleep on him, if you snoozed or you weren't paying attention, and then he caught you off, he would catch guys. You just weren't paying attention. He asked you a question and you don't know it, and now you're doing push-ups. So training was, we started in the wintertime, real early in the morning. We went down to the waterfront in the freezing cold. We did PT every morning, and then we would go to the classroom. And later on, after we got our Firefighter 1 certificate, we started Firefighter 2, which is live burns. So you go into a burn building, you put out fires, you learn how to use your SCBA, how to stretch lines, how to cut holes in roofs, and do everything that firefighters do.
Interesting. Yeah, it's so cool to me, that kind of environment, to where you're kind of like amongst people with a common goal. And very rarely in life are you kind of in that situation. I guess maybe kind of school is that kind of environment a little bit, but in the way I guess in everything you're competing, but like whenever you get that opportunity to be like one, on a team, a team member, and everybody's kind of like watching out for everybody, and that's just such a cool thing. It's kind of rare in most environments, and first responders and military certainly get that opportunity to be amongst a group where it's like everybody has each other's back. Everybody,
Mhm.
certainly there's gonna still gonna be like bad relationships and things like that, but it's just cool to have that kind of opportunity.
Yeah, it's pretty exhilarating.
So I think what's interesting to me is like the fact that you have to go through this physical kind of training and everything as you're getting into firefighting, but then afterwards people may fall out of that kind of physical fitness. When people first get in, though, like when they're in that first stage and second stage, it was called, what was the second stage called? The live
Uh,
burn.
Live burns, yeah, live
Yeah.
burns, yeah.
So once you get to that stage, is there still that physical component to it, like physical training and stuff like that to it, or is it more kind of like just in the first stage?
No, it gets even more, because now live burns is you're actually going into the building with charged hose lines, and you're learning how to fight the fire. These are controlled burns in a concrete building. They don't get as hot as a real fire gets, but they try to make them as real life as possible. They're definitely super smoky. You can't really see anything, so you have to learn how to be in this. You're on air, you're completely encapsulated in your bunker gear, and that is designed to keep you from burning up, but it also traps in all your body heat. And you're wearing a tank on your back, and you're crawling on the floor, and your helmet's turning sideways, and your mask is doing this, and your straps come undone, and it's all so uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable from the beginning until you take all the stuff off. And like I said, you can't see, so you have to learn how to navigate by feel and sound, and it's a very interesting experience, especially if you never did it before, to go through it. And it's hard work.
What kind of like mental strain is that, especially the first time? And do you have any um like at the time, did you have any like dreams and like kind of like nightmare situations or anything like that? Like any anxiety after that first experience?
Well, everybody's young. It's a very charged up atmosphere. Guys are excited. We're becoming firemen. So it's not too much anxiety. It's just you want to do everything right. You don't want your chiefs and your trainers to see you screwing up, because you don't, it's not even that you're afraid you're going to lose the job. It's because you want to be known as somebody that can be relied on. So if you screw up a stretch, and you're stretching a hose line in, you screw that up, or you don't put a ladder up right, because there's pressure on you and you're kind of cracking under the pressure, you feel bad afterwards. I think that's a natural thing, because you're trying to be part of the team. And the team concept here is like everybody tries their hardest, and you don't want to let each other down. So that's really the bigger pressure. But that kind of goes away quick, because we drill and we drill, and you make mistakes and you figure it out until it's all second nature.
Yeah. And to me, it's like there would certainly be pressure, but there would also kind of be like a camaraderie built.
Yeah.
When you have a group of guys, or I guess guys and girls, whatever it is, what kind of like is there a lot of dropout, or is there a lot of people who get kicked out? Like how does that work within the training?
You know, I can only speak to my little world. Um, we did have a guy drop out. You could see the look on his face right from day one, and he lasted barely 2 weeks. But they tried like hell to keep him in. They were taking him over to the side, talking to him. The mayor didn't want him to drop out. Nobody wanted him to leave, and he said, "No, I'm not doing this." And I don't know what his reasoning was, but you do get every once in a while somebody gets injured, but they could come back on the next class sometimes, as long as it's not an injury that finishes them. And it hardly ever is when you're in training. It just might be shin splints to a knee injury. They just can't continue with the class. Uh, I don't think it's that common for people to want to drop it though, because that's something that they've wanted to do all along.
So I feel like fire is 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 that thing that's like the almost like an equalizer within an everyday situation, to where like if you're in the military, you kind of like that's something that most people don't get to experience, that kind of environment. But anybody at any time can experience a fire. So I feel like it's 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 not natural and normal in society, but it's something that we're all familiar with. But
Yeah,
even in that situation, especially in a huge fire, it seems like it would be such a awe-inspiring moment to like see something big on fire, and then realizing that you have to go into it.
right.
How did it hit you whenever you or did it how did it hit you at all when it was just like, this is the first kind of thing that I'm ever doing, or potentially ever doing, that could take my life, like if I don't do something right?
Right. Uh, it when you get, well, all right. Look, the first fire I had was a typical house fire. It was a bedroom fire, and you go upstairs, it's clear, and then you get to the landing and there's smoke, and you could feel the heat. You know the fire's over there. You mask up and you just crawl in, and then you start learning lessons and stuff right there. Um, and you take it in. I guess everybody's going to do it differently, but for the most part, you've trained so much over those 6 months, and then there's always training when you're on shift too. Something, but everything just sort of happens like the way you practice, and that's why the repetition is so important, because it's just another time I'm crawling on a floor with a hose into some smoke. and but the thing is, it's the real thing now. So that is a good point. And I think for the most part, I never really consider it. I think for the most part, I just try not to think about it. And because of the training being so burned into your skull, probably not a good choice of words there. Uh, you just do, and that's why, um, like they talk about Olympic athletes, where you know they're not even thinking, they're just doing, right? And you see them at the height of their game. Uh, It's it's probably not as focused as that because of the chaos that's around you, but you just everything just sort of happens, and okay, fire is traveling through the building, and we studied how fire travels through a building. So you just go, okay, we're going here, we're doing this, we're opening up this wall, and there's leadership there, you know. So if you do start to fog out a little bit and you shut down, there's always going to be somebody there, your captain, a chief, a senior guy that's going to be like, "Yo, kid, over here, do this, do that," and they don't sometimes just take you and point you and say, "Just open the hose," and that's it.
Yeah, it's funny to think about it from that perspective of like almost just like it's your workstation. Like this burning building
Yeah,
your, your desk or whatever for
yeah,
the time being. It's like it's
right.
just where you're doing what you know how to do. And yeah, it's pretty interesting to think about it from that perspective. It's definitely though something like you said, it takes a lot of training physically and obviously the mental side too, just to be able to go in and not feel that pressure and feel like, oh my gosh, like at any moment this could topple over, this could happen, or this like all those different things that could go through someone's head, especially
Right.
an untrained person. If someone untrained were to go into a burning building, there would certainly be a lot more nervousness and wouldn't recommend it, but it would be a lot more panic and thing. But it's cool to think like how you or someone trained could just like, oh, okay, this is what we do in this situation, and someone else would see like a burning whatever and be like, either most people would probably be a freeze, but a flight kind of situation going on.
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah, which
cool.
is normal. That's normal.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving into kind of you mentioned your podcast at the beginning. When did you start doing that?
It was July of 2018. I did actually have a short little stint with another podcast, which was like a firefighter fitness podcast, but it just didn't seem to be going right for me. And then I started training with the steel mace, and the first thing I noticed was that it was a very unique thing. And then I started noticing on social media that there's this whole thing called unconventional training or unconventional fitness, and so being so into it, I started going for certifications, and I traveled a little bit and I would meet people, and I always noticed I had excellent conversations with people who used Mace. And the only thing I could say the reason why is because uh, you kind of got to be open minded to grab a mace and start training with it. And I'm not trying to be negative on people because they don't want to use it. If you don't want to use one, you don't want to use one. But it seems if you find somebody open minded and you hand them a mace and you explain it to them, it just goes much better. So I was like, this is a good idea for a podcast. uh, I'll be able to have good conversations with people. Seems like there's enough people out there I could do steel mace conversations a lot, but I also knew that I didn't want the podcast to be specifically about that. I also wanted to just talk about fitness, leadership, and mindset. And then as things developed, and I became a better steel mace coach, I started to really realize this is a great tool for firefighters. It's perfect for anybody who's a first responder, I should say, because of the fact that you work a shift job, and sometimes you come off shift at 7 in the morning, you didn't sleep at all, right? So the first excuse is, well, I'm too tired, I'm going to go home and go to sleep. But then the next day they don't feel good either, and then the next thing you know, they're back at work again, same rat race. And I noticed with me, as I was getting older and moving through the job, it was getting harder for me to recover. So the best thing about the steel mace was found it great for my recovery. I could still exercise with it, but I didn't feel like I was beating myself down, like as if I was doing squats or shoulder presses, bodybuilding style workouts. And then that back fed into my health and fitness. So I just realized this is a great thing. So now, the podcast is all comprehensive, first responders to uh, single dads, single moms, whatever, it's good for recovery or to tie in with your other style of training.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't expand on what they're doing in fitness, whether that be just an unwillingness or just not even knowing what's out there. I think there's tons of different ways to get fit and to
Yeah.
just, even if you like something, just try something different. There's, I mean, literally anything and everything out there that could be the next thing that you fall in love with and becomes your passion, and you start a podcast on it. I mean, who knows? It's just,
Yeah. That's it.
it's really interesting to think like, uh I mean, however long ago you want to go back with it, but 50 years ago, 60 years ago, people, it was just like, oh, well, for one, you probably didn't even go to the gym and workout, but those who did, it was just like you had these specific tools and that's what you used and that's what everybody's was using. And you fast forward to today and it's like there's so many
Yeah.
different ways to get fit, stay fit and everything. But when it comes to the mace, like what is it what is a workout like with a mace? Like
Hmm.
what I mean, I've never used one. I've seen
Yeah.
it be used, but I've never seen one. And I mean, it seems like it would definitely be very challenging and very just like to a newcomer, it
Yeah.
would be something that would make you soar in a whole new in a whole new way.
Well, the best way to explain anything is with a video or a picture, right? A picture's worth 1,000 words, or a video. Go to either my Instagram at Steel Mace Nation, or go to my YouTube channel, Steel Mace Nation Podcast, and there's workout videos on here. You could watch the videos. I try to do everything I could possibly do so people could see what you could do with a mace. But it's a funny thing where the mace is now and really where it started. It started as a rock on the end of a stick in India thousands of years ago, where Indian wrestlers essentially wanted something to just practice throwing, like when you're throwing an opponent over your shoulder. So they tied a heavy hunk of rock to the stick, or they probably did a very good job, I'm sure. They didn't just put some twine on it. But it was just one thing that they did. And it's a swing. The mace goes behind your head and you pull it over. It goes back around this way. You pull it over this side, and it just goes around and around. So, are you familiar with a kettlebell halo?
Yeah.
Right, where you come around, draw it around your head. It's a similar motion to that, except you got a long stick and the weights at the end. And so there's a technique, and you feel it swing, and then you pull it over, you engage your lat, and it really hits your core out of all things, because there's this rotational movement going on. That's all they did. That was their exercise, and it stayed that way for literally a couple of thousand years. And then, I don't know, maybe, I think it's about 15 years ago or so, a wrestler here in the United States who does a form of wrestling called catch as catch, catch as catch can wrestling. So I know it's a strange name. It turns out it's a pretty gruesome sport that started in Europe, where people were like messing each other up for a buck, but it's a form of wrestling, and this guy's name is Jake Shannon, and he was doing this wrestling, and he comes in contact when he's traveling Europe with a Persian guy who's got this wooden, beautiful mace. It's actually called a gada or a gada. That's what it was. So his idea was, well, they're too expensive to make out of wood for mass production, so I'll make them out of metal. And he was selling them for like $225 each, which is not really that cheap anyway. I mean, how much would the wood ones have been? I actually interviewed him on my podcast like early on. He was one of the first guys I got. And and then, we're sitting there talking about it. And I'm like, it's so funny. It went unchanged for like a couple thousand years. And now you have steel mace flow, which is basically like, picture yoga meets martial arts meets steel mace. Okay, so you're moving intentionally with a purpose. And with steel mace flow, the idea is to make lightweight heavy. So if you have a 10-pound mace, you do all the things you're supposed to be doing in the gym with your barbells and everything else that probably half the people don't even do. Bend it, break it, twist it, right? When you do a deadlift, you're supposed to try to break the bar. So you do that while you're moving the mace. And it humbles you. You're like, oh, this is only 10 pounds, but I'm dripping sweat. So you got that. Then you have traditional swings, flow style, and then you have more of an athletic style, or I've seen the word ballistic, whatever that means. But an athletic style would be something like you hold the mace out in front of you, and then you do skaters, which is where you jump from side to side. Which, if you go to any athletic academy, somebody's a basketball player, the coach might have them doing one of these jumps side to side, except now hold a mace, which, maybe that athlete needs, maybe he's ready to advance or something like that. So there's those basic forms of training. They all kind of blend together, and you could train heavy swings, you could train light swings. There's actually a thing called the Vintage Strength Games. They have it in Florida every year. I missed this one this year, but that's heavy mace swings. So everybody gets up on the podium, and you're swinging. Your swing has to be perfect. You have a judge, and you try to get 200 swings in 5 minutes or more. And try to beat the other guy. So there's competitions in Europe. There's competitions in the United States. And like I said, there's these different styles of using it, and a multitude of different exercises, and several different approaches that you can come in on and use it. So it's very dynamic. It's actually fun, and I consider it a very freeing kind of thing. It's saved my butt. When you got to work out, but you don't feel like it. So, maybe you walk on the treadmill for 10 minutes and all of a sudden you feel a little bit better. I grab a 10-pound mace, a 20-pound mace, whatever. I start swinging it. Within a couple minutes, I'm ready to go.
It seems like there's definitely a lot to it that certainly I didn't know about. But when it comes to the benefits of like a first responder, a firefighter, it seems like it'd be so obvious. Like, are there many people out there using it in that community?
Not really. And that's I'm gonna kind of push the limits here without trying to get in trouble. But the fire service is in trouble. And it's not that firemen are not, they're not superheroes. They're ordinary people. So if you look at American society, 70% of society is considered obese. There's a lot of people on insulin, and they're all eating processed garbage, right? The majority of people are overweight and unhealthy. So if you look at the fire service, it's like the same ratio, because again, they're just people. Humans are very good at figuring out how to do things despite the fact that they're not too healthy. They can still put out fires, they can still climb ladders, they can still do whatever. So firefighters need to get kicked in the butt a little bit, and that's what I've been trying to do. And they need, there's guys that are challenged with weight, heavy weight and stuff. That all should be taken care of. And I don't really blame them as much as well, no, I shouldn't say that. The responsibility does come onto yourself, but it's the culture needs to change. And that's a problem. And I think the leadership needs to change too. Not that I'm saying a chief or a boss has to get out. I'm saying how they do things, and how we approach it, because this is going to be a change that takes time.
Yeah, I think it boils down to that, to everything. It's culture. We just have to value different things. I think when we
Yeah.
when we change what we value, we change our habits to match those values and to reach a certain level of reputation that meets those values as well. Um, and I think that's a struggle to do. Like, how do you do that? I think that's the big question. How do you change the values without, you know, and I think today it's even a bigger issue without, offending somebody, saying that, oh, you're not, the way you do it's not right. I think that's such a hard thing to tell somebody,
Yeah.
even whenever they have, diabetes at an early age that they caused, or have, whether they are overweight, or, they're doing obvious things wrong. Just to be able to say that to somebody without being sued, or like on a professional level without being sued,
Yeah.
it's dangerous, because you can't just come out and say, hey,
Yeah.
you got to kind of wrap it in 10 layers of foil and softness just to present it to somebody, and then
Yeah.
at that time it's
You
crazy.
got to respect the safe zone. There's everybody has their own personal space nowadays, well, but there's nothing really wrong with that. You need to get to people on their level. You can't come in from over here and be like, oh, do this and do that, and expect them to. Nobody wants to be told what to do anyway. And if somebody likes to eat ice cream every night and they're getting fat from it, and you're telling them, hey, you got to stop eating ice cream, that might be the only thing that's holding them together right now. Sadly to say, but hey, everybody's at a different thing, so you got to get to their level. And you know, I I feel like the fire service has been very good to me, and um, I want to be able to give back to the fire service something. And I've fallen into this fitness thing and became a coach and stuff. So I'm like, well, that is what I could give back. I can't give back something else. I'm like I said earlier, be you, just be you. This is what I got, guys. Look, I'll help you. This is what I could do for you. As far as the steel mace is concerned, some guys I've shown, and it's always been a successful mission. Once I show them how to use one, they all agree there's something interesting here. But I do believe too that there's a lot of reluctancy, because guys don't want to do something if they're gonna look stupid too, and they they're like, wait a minute, to swing that weight behind you, they're like, well, it's only 10 pounds, but if I can't do it, I'm gonna look stupid. And so I got to try to get in on that level. So it's
Yeah,
a lot of psychology going on there.
it is. There's so much psychology that does go with physical training and trying to really help people become healthy. But I think it's so cool, just the people I've been lucky enough to talk to and meet on this podcast in the fire service. One example, I don't know if you know who they are. They have a Instagram account called Live Surf Thrive, Aaron Quinn, but
Yep,
I've
I
had
had him
him
on.
on. Oh, did
Yeah,
you? I had him on
yeah,
a few times. First
great.
time,
He's great.
yeah, we talked about Wim Hof on the last one,
Yeah,
and we talked about just kind of his life and everything. But he does obviously the Wim Hof thing. He does a bunch of yoga, but just the variety of different things that I've found that firefighters do, and it's so cool. Just because most people think, oh, firefighters, they're just you call them and they're there and then they're gone. Like, you don't really think about too much after that, but they have, it's just like at any other pocket of people. It's just they have these, or at least certainly the ones I've talked to have had such interesting ways of doing things that I've learned a lot from so far. It's really cool.
yeah,
But there's so much more that we could talk about, and I really want to. In a definitely a future episode, I would love to have you back on. I don't want to, take up too much of your time, and I don't want to, create an episode that's 4 hours long. I know there's so much that we could talk about,
yeah.
and if it's something you would like to do to have you back on sometime, I would love to do that. But
Absolutely, yeah. And then I'd love to get you over on my podcast to pick your brain a little bit.
that'd be awesome.
Yeah, you run a really good podcast. I've been watching some episodes and everything. How long have you been doing it for now?
I started last year in May, the end of May,
Okay.
and so
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and you keep indicating like how it's been awesome to meet people, and that is definitely true. I agree with you 100%. I feel like I have friends around the entire world. Like if I'm going to whatever country or whatever state, oh, I know I did a podcast with them and them. I'm gonna call them up, and see if they're going to be around. And I
Yeah,
mean, I know they'll come meet me because we had such a good conversation. This world needs more conversations, not
absolutely.
those 15-second soundbite things, people distracted with their phones and all the garbage like that. So, you tapped right into something awesome, and you're a good interviewer. So
I
I
appreciate it.
think you're going to be doing this for a real long time, and it's just going to keep getting better.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and, I feel the same way. It's so cool to I like to, like, keep a list of people, where they're from and what they do, and just the amount of different people, because, like, this is a podcast where I like to talk to people from all different walks of life, and just the amount of people from, Olympic athletes to ex-professional athletes to, Navy SEALs to teachers. Like, it's just there's so many different people who, especially in a time when I started, you couldn't have a face-to-face conversation with anybody. You couldn't meet anybody new.
Right,
So
right.
it was just the perfect kind of time to start it up. But I really appreciate you saying that and coming on. And I look forward to having you back on and potentially being on your podcast. That would be a lot of fun. I'd like to do that for sure.
Yeah, you got it, Dan. Stay in touch, and we'll do it again.